the bone, how could we wander so far from our home? With our true loves beside us, we are kissed by the sea. Islanders will always be. Here we go. Islanders, Islanders, right to the bone. How could we wander so far from our home? With a true love beside us, we are kissed by the sea. Islanders will always be.
In 1960, when W.A.C. Bennett took over the Blackball Ferry line to create the genesis of what is today BC Ferries, the second largest ferry company in the world, he did so because he realized that without a ferry system, we could not generate the economic benefit that this province was capable of doing. Back in 1960, if you wanted to travel this coast without BC Ferries, you could travel from the American border to Squamish, you could take another jump out at Bella Coola, and another one out at Prince Rupert and Kitimat, and that was it. Without BC Ferries, that's all the coast you can get access to. And funny thing, in 2014, the only thing you can get access to without BC Ferries is the border to Squamish, Bella Coola, Kitimat, and Prince Rupert. We need this corporation bought back as a crown under the direction of the BC Transportation Ministry because it is the only solution.
Chair Greg Moore, he's the mayor of the city of Port Coquitlam, but he's also the chair of Metro Vancouver, representing those gazillions of people that support us. Greg, come on out here.
Thank you very much, and you might be wondering why myself or Metro Vancouver is here. So we know the importance in Metro Vancouver of a transportation of a ferry system. In fact, you know, most people won't know, but we have Bowen Island, which is a ferry-dependent community, part of our regional district. And I know that they let us know how important that ferry system is to them. Whether it's their residents that live there that actually go to the city to work every day and rely on that system, or it's for their tourism, but it's part of their road network. It's part of their transit network. And we need to ensure that the decisions that are made here are the same decisions that we need to make in our local governments so that together we can build the communities that we want to raise our children in, that we want to work in, and that we want to retire in. So congratulations to all of you for coming out today to make sure that this is an issue that we all will work together on.
Let's be very clear. This decision can be described in 2 words: job killer. Let's understood, this decision will result in jobs up and down the coast being killed by this government, jobs that support families and communities on this coast. The study recently that came out last week from Prince Rupert said the service cuts will lead to widespread job loss in northern British Columbia. I think we all know that because we have businesses who are going to speak here who say don't do it. We have working people who say don't do it. We have local governments who say this is a really dumb idea, and we have the residents of the coast saying this is a dumb idea. So who the hell wants to do this? No one. And so that's why we have to relay the message here today. I have another idea for the government. It's a novel idea. A couple of governments before they used to do this. But yesterday, they brought out a study, the Columbia Institute, and it's a study of what would happen if we actually built the next 3 ferries in British Columbia. And the study says, well, if you built the next 3 ferries in British Columbia, you'd create 1,000 jobs. Wow, that's a good idea, don't you think? You know what else you'd create? It's sort of economics 101, only the economically insane would not get this. You would create $100 million in tax revenue for the federal and provincial governments, including $39 million for the provincial government. So why don't we build the ferries, take the money, and keep the services going? and keep the jobs in British Columbia. That makes sense to me. So I want to say another thing, though, which is I have driven the Sea to Sky Highway. I confess I've got up there. It's a great highway, by the way. Well built by working folks at about $1 billion. And let me tell you, I didn't have to pay any toll when I went up there. And I say to this government, if you can find $1 billion to build a highway to Whistler, then you can find the money to keep the ferry service going in British Columbia. I'll tell you that.
So if ferries are losing so much money, we all know how much money they're losing because they take money from us every single day that we ride them. If they're losing so much money, how come the government is still getting paid $6 million in dividends from BC Ferries? Go figure. Where's the liberal math in that? Let's just take $6 million and cut from the people who use it. We as ferry users have invested $5 billion in the ferries through our ticket fares, through the increasing costs. We've spent $5 billion. We are paying for the cost of new ferries, we're paying for the cost of operating our ferries. We pay on average 80% of the cost of our ferries. If you ride a bus anywhere, you usually pay about 25%. Here, we are paying 80% of the cost of using our highway. We've seen billions of dollars going into hardtop. We've seen money invested in the Northeast. Fabulous roads they've got up there. If you ever can afford to get up there on the ferry, it is wonderful highway they've got up there. Highway 97, 4-laning it. Are they being asked to pay for that? No. Yeah, that's free. The only place where there is a toll is here, Sea to Sky. It's a lovely road. It is a lovely road. Billions of dollars going into that lovely road. Are they being charged to pay for it? No.
We mourn the eroding fabric of our province brought on by backward BC Ferry's policy of the current and previous BC governments. We stand with our coastal communities. We stand with British Columbians. We are hopeful that our government will hear the message of gatherings just like this and will act on our behalf. We are hopeful that the BC government will represent all British Columbians. I have witnessed this group of community leaders set aside their political differences and roll up their sleeves to defend the future of our coastal communities. I applaud their efforts. There are incredible economic challenges ahead, and we must work together to overcome them. But the answer is not abandoning a fifth of our population and a third of our provincial economy. Decisions to increase ferry fares and decrease service levels don't just hurt our coastal communities, they hurt all of British Columbia. Communities across the province are affected by these decisions. The whole provincial economy is impacted by these decisions. So with you today, here in front of the legislature, I challenge the government to justify the economic and social impacts of the BC Ferry cuts. I challenge the Premier, when you know our businesses are suffering, when you know our people are suffering, and when you know job opportunities are suffering, Premier Clark, I ask, when will you act on behalf of our coastal communities? When will you act on behalf of our coastal people? Thank you.
Adam was nice enough to find a way to make his speech short enough to give me a chance to say something. Look, I'm at the federal level as your member of parliament, but as a British Columbian, I stand with you as a member of parliament who represents Salt Spring Island, Saturna, Galliano, Pender, and Maine. I live on the BC Ferries. I work on the BC Ferries. I hang out with my constituents on the BC Ferries, and I'm looking out at this crowd of brilliant, creative, homemade signs. I read grim fairy tales. I read ferries are our highways. I read ferries should be a service, not a business. I see Quadra Island set adrift in the Salish Sea. I see Saturna needs its ferries. I see Salt Spring needs its ferries. British Columbians need our ferries. Christy, make it work.
Thank you very much, Adam, Elizabeth, and Andrew, for being here on behalf of the Green Party. This is a nonpartisan event, by the way. I even invited the Premier, and I even invited Todd Stone, and we got the other parties, but for some reason the Liberals didn't want to come. Can't understand it. I think
one of the reasons I ran as an independent was because I felt that our democracy was starting to fail us. And one of the things that I really believe is that government has an obligation to listen to us. I say no, you can't make a decision to cut off coastal communities without a clear economic impact analysis that shows whether or not you have a right to do that. No, you can't disrupt tourism on our coastal communities along the Chilcotin Plateau or along Highway 16. You can't disrupt the businesses that have grown up there and are dependent upon a ferry system that services us. And no, we can't let our islands become the privileged access to a wealthy few. And that's what's going to happen if they continue on in this vein. So what do I say to government? I say stop transferring the dividends into our central revenue pockets. Examine whether the Ferry Corporation should be brought back into the Ministry of Transportation. Treat our ferry system as a part of a highway system. Washington does. Alaska does. Alaska calls it the Marine Highway, and where do they travel? They travel through coastal British Columbia. We can do it too.
I have a surprise virtual guest, and I will need quiet, please, because you won't want to miss a word. So maybe I would like to introduce to you right now a woman that has some very interesting views to share. I said the Liberals wouldn't come. Well, we got them here virtually. I'd like to introduce to you your Premier, Christy Clark.
The impact of the new fare increases, well, according to BC Ferry's latest annual report, these unprecedented fares, as they say, could result in a decline in ferry traffic, and that's a quote. No kidding. And I'm betting that fares have finally gotten so high that for every dollar they raise, it will actually garner less in revenue. Higher fares mean fewer passengers, so the accountants will have to subtract paying customers from every new dollar they add to ticket prices. And at this rate, how long will it be before they abandon the routes where they don't make any money? How long before the provincial government abandons their responsibility to provide a public service to many of the people who depend on the ferries to travel or ship their goods? Our transportation minister seems to have an insatiable appetite for funding highways if they require blacktop, and he seems perfectly at peace with providing free ferries on inland lakes in BC, but he doesn't seem to have the same affection for our maritime highway on the coast.